national strategy for information sharing and safeguarding really came out of several key drivers. First off, the pressing financial situation we find ourselves in the public sector. We see it every day in the newspapers here at the federal level, but it's much worse at the state and local level in terms of impacts. There's a pressing need to be able to be more efficient, to be able to reduce overlap and redundancy through more effective information sharing and integrating these best practices approaches. The second key driver is the increasingly evolving and converging threat. We see that with the recent executive order on cybersecurity information sharing focused on resiliency in the critical infrastructure key resource sectors, the same sectors we're looking at in terms of traditional physical threat protection from a homeland security counterterrorism perspective. The third key driver is this tsunami of information that we're facing. We've done a pretty good job with sharing information, but the volumes of information that we're faced with are just increasingly growing, and there's a pressing need to integrate best practices in a consistent way, across the different folks that need to share information to protect the American people and enhance national security. Behind all that, there's one more kind of key idea that I want to highlight. In 2007, the President then released the National Strategy for Information Sharing. It was the impetus for my office focusing on our domestic initiatives, the National Network of Fusion Centers, suspicious activity reporting, which maybe folks know as if you see something, say something. This version of the strategy, while reaffirming the 2007 strategy, added the word safeguarding to the title. Right, and when you look at the strategy, there's a lot about safeguarding. Really, that's another key driver here, which is the government and stakeholders more broadly recognizing that sharing and safeguarding are really two sides of the same coin. To the extent we do a better job safeguarding information, both from a privacy and an information security perspective, we can enable that much more effective information sharing within a policy-compliant framework, right, that allows us to meet evolving mission needs. Well, President Obama signed out and released the strategy in December. Since then, we've been going through a national security staff-led process to build out implementation plans. The strategy highlighted 16 priority objectives, and 5 in particular were top priority. So agency stewards have been identified for those different priority objectives, and we've been going through a coordinated process. I co-chair with my partner on the national security staff, Charlie Bartolus, who's the Senior Director for Information Sharing and Safeguarding Policy, a White House Interagency Policy Committee on Information Sharing and Access. So that's where we've been doing this planning work with the interagency through an NSS-led process. We're here at the ESRI event. Geospatial information sharing is critical. My friends in the geospatial community always like to remind me everything has a place, and being able to describe that place in a consistent manner will enable effective information sharing. An example of this that we've been driving with our mission partners at DHS and the intelligence community, our state and local partners, and others more broadly, is something that we refer to as the Geospatial Interoperability Reference Architecture. The idea is that you have a degree of alignment around geospatial information standards, architecture, tagging approaches, but what's aligned on paper isn't always interoperable on the wire. So can we drive that next level of interoperability to allow, within appropriate policy contexts, safeguarding information both in terms of privacy and security? Can we drive that next level of interoperability on geospatial information? So that's something we talked about this morning. Another example is work that's being done primarily out of the Federal Geographic Data Committee around the GEO platform, key part of data.gov and the government's open government strategy. That's another topic we talked about. My office doesn't have a direct involvement in the GEO platform, but we're looking at it from this overarching perspective of geospatial interoperability. One last example I want to highlight there is a core standards framework for my office is something called the National Information Exchange Model. It's gotten huge traction across the government, across levels of government internationally. We've been working with the Open Geospatial Consortium to make sure that we go from mostly aligned on geospatial frameworks like geographic markup language to 100% fully interoperable. So that's actually kind of exciting and something that folks are talking about here too at the conference.